Welcome to Ready Set RC, and today we have the FS Racing Tank Plus. This is the third RC that I've gotten from the FSR FTX family. The first one being the Model GT, the second one being the DR8, and now the Tank Plus. And guys, I am really impressed with this truck. I purchased this truck from AliExpress back in February of 2023. So roughly about the same time that I picked up the Model GT. But let's go through the boring stuff first, guys, and then we'll get into the truck. Now, first off, I want to show you, they sent over some decals. Some of the decals were already applied, but if you want to put on extra decals onto the truck, feel free. I'm gonna leave it as is. I like it more simple and plain. It looks like what they provided too are some battery leads. If you do not run XT90 batteries, they provide you some leads that you can actually install these onto your batteries to run them on the truck. The truck comes with XT90s on the ESC. The bind plug, just in case your receiver and transmitter ever become unbound, you get to bind it up again with the bind plug. And then there's the owner's manual. And this owner's manual kind of covers a few of their vehicles. It covers their buggy, which is the Focus, Truggy, which is the Leopard, another monster truck, which is called the Sharks, their desert buggy, the Atom, and then you see the tank over here. In the owner's manual, you're going to find some 3D renderings. And then towards the end, what you're going to see is a breakdown of all of the other vehicles it covers, with the tank being the last vehicle in there. And then there's some parts breakdowns within there as well if you want to order any parts or part numbers for the vehicle. And then lastly, we get the controller. And you guys, if you've been watching my other first looks of the Model GT, you've seen this controller before. Nice foam wheel. You got the throttle right here, reverse switches for the steering and the throttle, steering dual rate, throttle dual rate, steering trim and throttle trim, and then there's a bind button right here on the other side. You have a third channel right here, and then a fourth channel down below where your thumb is. 4 AA's down below. If you run rechargeable batteries in your controller, there is a charge lead on the other side of the controller. I didn't have any problems with this in the other cars that I've ran it with. Very straightforward. Signal, the signal and everything else I didn't have an issue with. And the power switch over here on the back side, but we'll take it through its paces and I'll report back on how it performs. But here we are, guys. This is what you came to see, which is the FS Racing Tank. And let's get the body off. The body is what, you know, for all of us, we all know the body's what's going to draw us in for the first, and then we'll look at everything else underneath. And we have a nice matte black with the FSR and Tank shining right through. These are not decals. Everything else is, but the FSR and the Tank are not decals on the body. This thing looks amazing, guys. I mean, I really like the work that I'm seeing with this. Got a nice little molded grille on the front, and the body pins are tethered. What we're seeing a lot of companies doing these days is the body pins are tethered to the shell. Underneath, it's backed with silver. Nice touch. Body feels nice in the hands. This is made out of Lexan, a good quality of Lexan too. Feels really good in the hands. I'm still going to do some reinforcement on it just for the availability of these bodies. I think that's what I'm going to do. So I just make sure I have this nice secure. I'm going to secure it up with some Gorilla Tape, and that's what I'll do. That's what I typically do with most of my trucks. But here we are with the FS Racing Tank Plus. And just so that you guys are aware, as I mentioned, I purchased this from AliExpress back in February of 2023. But at the time of this video, I'm noticing that BasherQueen, if you are stateside, is selling this on her eBay store. If anyone's looking for this truck and you are stateside, BasherQueen eBay store is the place that I'm going to suggest that you probably get it, and get it at a really good price. One other thing that I want to mention that I got with the truck, and I forgot to mention this when I was going through everything else, I did get some upper arms for the truck. This came with it. I did not order this. This came with the order when I placed it. If I didn't say it before, this is a 1/8 scale 6S monster truck. And I'll try to give you guys some other comparisons. I'll bring out the DR8 and maybe another monster truck or two to give you guys the size comparisons to this truck. I'm not going to give a comparisons on the build quality or anything like that to any other trucks, but I will give you some size comparisons and maybe show you guys how the chassis itself shares the same, shares the same chassis as the DR8, because all of these, similar to the owner's manual, are based off the same chassis. Depending on where you are in the world, this truck is also sold as the MHD Pro Gunner MT 6S. Basically the same truck, just a different shell, different anodized aluminum that's on it, but it's the same truck. Just we have a nice composite bumper with excellent reinforcement going on in the front. Pillar ball suspension with a CVD type drive shaft in the front, of sway bars in the front as well. I'm looking at an aluminum hinge pin retainer. The lower support arms, they look about, if I had to guess, about 5 millimeters thick. Camber and toe adjustments in the front. Coil over, big bore aluminum shocks. There is a screw down adjustment to them, and they do come with metal shock caps. You have multiple adjustments for the body height on this car, multiple adjustments for the shock adjustments, lower and upper. Shock tower feels fairly thick. If I had to guess, 4 millimeters. I could be wrong on that. I'm just, feeling it and guessing, but feels about 4 millimeters thick on the shock tower. 6061 aluminum chassis, and it feels about maybe either 2.5 or 3 millimeters thick. You have an aluminum steering plate with bracing going from the aluminum steering plate to the chassis. That's composite. And another set of bracing going from the rear to the chassis, and that's also composite. You have an aluminum tower-to-tower brace on the truck. You have dog bones going from the front differential to the center differential, and then again from the center differential to the rear differential. You have camber adjustments in the rear, sway bars in the rear. Once again, those beefy suspension arms are in the rear as well. You have big bore shocks in the rear, same as the front. Multiple body adjustments in the rear as well. It looks like you can probably interchange the bumpers from the front to the rear. They look interchangeable. Droop screw adjustments on the front and the rear, and the droop screws are in them already. Dog bones in the rear. Nice sizable battery tray. As they say, it's going to be 6S capable. Problem that I have with the battery tray is that even though it takes 6S and they have 2 battery straps in here, if you try to run 2 3S packs in this, I think you're going to have a problem. And I would have liked that they provided you a loop pack to at least close off one side, because most folks right now are going to run a single 6S pack. If you're going to run 2 3S packs in this, I see a problem because I don't see the height in the battery tray to allow it to capture the second battery, and I could see that just constantly hitting the steering column in the front. As for electronics, we're looking at a 15 kilogram servo. I'm thinking that may be a little underwhelming. We have a 2000 kV 4274 brushless motor, and that is paired with a 12-tooth pinion. I'm going to see how it does with heat and performance, but I think that's the area where we could probably go up. 12-tooth on this, I may want to see that go up at least to a 14-tooth. Let's see how that operates first on this. And then for the ESC, we're looking at 150 amp ESC. The leads coming off the ESC are XT90s. Guys, I'm thoroughly impressed with what I'm seeing with the Tank Plus. All metal gears in this truck, all ball bearings in this truck. We have nice skid plates in the rear and again here in the front. It's just looks, and when I saw this online and I was looking to purchase it, it just looks like it's built well, guys. 17 millimeter hexes. As for the tires, they're nice and meaty. I know we've seen this pattern before, and for us guys who have been in the hobby for quite some time, put it down in the comments of where you've seen these tires and the patterns before, because I definitely could say I have owned the truck with these patterns before. So let's see if everyone else can possibly guess where they've seen the patterns, where they've seen the pattern of these tires before. I won't mention it in the video, but if you get it right in the comments, I'll definitely let you know. But let's get the DR8 first out, and then I'll bring 1 or 2 other trucks so you guys can get some size comparisons. But let's get the DR8 out so you guys can see what that matches up in regards to size and the layout to the Tank Plus. For the dimensions, we're looking at an overall length of 590 millimeters, the width 480 millimeters, the wheelbase of 360 millimeters, and here we are with the Tank DR8. Same chassis. I'll let you guys see what that looks like. You guys can get an idea, definitely running shorter arms on the DR8, but once I take the bodies off, you'll see that the chassis are the same. The DR8 would be equivalent to their Atom in the FSR world. So just giving you guys another angle of the width. You guys can clearly see the width differences, but as I mentioned before, it's not the arms that are shared between these two RCs, it's the chassis. The chassis is the same chassis between the two. You'll see that when I show you the wheelbase of the two, the wheelbase is the same. I matched that up as best as possible. I don't know how that's looking on the camera, but you can see the wheelbase is the same between the two cars. And why is that? Because as I mentioned before, the chassis are the same. Just giving you an overview of the layout of the chassis, minus the shock towers between the two vehicles. And as I mentioned, the suspension arms and the suspension arms on them. If you look at everything else just within the chassis, the layout, where the ESC is, where the motor mounts are going to be different between the two cars, of course, but you're going to see where the servo is laid, where the receiver box is laid, the steering plate, where that's associated. That's what I'm talking about when I say they share the same chassis between the two. You're seeing that the chassis layout between the two is the same, and that's because these chassis layouts are shared across multiple different platforms of these two RCs. Now here we are with the FS Racing Tank Plus Traxxas Sledge. This is to give you guys a better idea of what the typical truggy size, because that's what the Traxxas Sledge is, typical truggy size. So if you have a Creighton, a Sledge, the Losi 8T, the Habal truggy, the Sledge shares the same size as any typical 8-scale truggy out there. So from the wheelbase, we can see they are practically spot on. So what you're looking at with this truck, I know everyone's looking at the design and it probably looks more closer to like an Outcast, but it's bigger than your 6S Outcast Notorious. We're looking at something that's probably closer to a truggy, a sledge. Just more of that monster truck style when we're talking about the ride heights. And there we are with the width, give you guys a little bit clearer idea of what I'm talking about. Look at the inners of the two, and they're right there. If anything, the Tank Plus is just a little bit wider, but there we are, looking at the inners. Get a good idea of what that looks like. So what's up next for the Tank Plus? We're gonna get this thing out, put it in some dirt, run it on a 6S, and see how this truck performs. I'm looking for some really good things with this truck. I've driven my Model GT, love that car. I've driven the DR8, I love that desert buggy. Let's see if this third installment, to me, is gonna give me the same joy that I've had with the first two. As I was telling you guys earlier in the year, I'm trying to bring RCs that you do not see typically over here on the US to show us US hobbyists out here that there are other options. You may have to wait on parts, you may have to wait on the RC when you first order it, but there are options. And when we first started in the hobby, at least for me, when I first started the hobby, parts weren't as readily available as they are now. So this is like a luxury to me to get the parts so readily available the way they are. But before, you always had to go to your local hobby shop, order the parts, check in, for 1 week to the next until when the parts came in, then come back and pick up the parts. But that's how and that wasn't a tremendously long time ago, but that's how I came up in the hobby, is that, buying parts online, ordering RCs online wasn't the thing. Getting parts and everything so readily available wasn't the thing. So if, with me, with the multiple RCs that I have, and if something was to ever happen to this and I had to wait for parts, I can wait. But the beauty of this, BasherQueen has them. I've looked online on her site and she has the parts available for this truck. She She has the parts available for the Atom. It's good to see that there is a US company now being able to supply the parts that we need for these great trucks and cars. But we're gonna leave it here. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Check us out on Instagram for the latest posts to the channel. This is Ready Set RC, signing out. Thanks again, guys.